In the effort to improve and enhance our vocabulary comprehension, we began our journey by examining the basic building blocks of the words that we use in the English language. We discussed how roots form the basis of many of the words that we use, and how adding prefixes and suffixes to those roots will enhance, or in some cases even change, the overall meaning of a word. We also discussed the important strategy of knowing the most common roots, prefixes, and suffixes to help us determine the meaning of unknown words that we may encounter. In this lesson, we are going to build on that foundation and examine synonyms and antonyms to help us improve our overall vocabulary comprehension and enhance our vocabulary for everyday use. We're also going to discuss an important strategy that will help us determine whether words are synonymous or antonymous. We will begin by defining our terms. First, what are synonyms? Synonyms are words that share the same meaning or maybe share some similarities in meaning. To help us understand, let's consider a couple of examples. First, let's look at hilarious and hysterical. Both mean the same thing. These are words that we use to say that something is funny. Another example would be outgoing and sociable. These words too are synonyms because they share the similar meaning of friendly. So synonyms will actually help us to expand our vocabulary to convey the same meaning in many different ways. So it's a good idea to know some different ways that you can say the same thing just by simply switching out words that share a similar meaning. When we come across two words and need to determine whether or not they are synonyms, there's a neat little trick that we can use to help us make that decision. So what we would do is swap the words out and use them in the same sentence. In our previous example of hilarious and hysterical, let's look at the following sentences. Kevin Hart's hilarious performance in Undeclared kick-started his television and film career. Now, let's look at the same sentence, except this time we're going to use the word hysterical. Kevin Hart's hysterical performance in Undeclared kick-started his television and film career. In this case, since we know that hilarious and hysterical both mean funny, we can determine that yes, these words are synonyms. Outgoing and sociable. Melissa possesses an outgoing personality. Melissa possesses a sociable personality. Well, the meaning that we want to get across here is that Melissa's personality is friendly. Both outgoing and sociable are similar in meaning, so yes, they are synonyms. In this case, both sentences convey the fact that Melissa is friendly. She has a friendly personality. So even when we have words that mean the same, sometimes they can convey slightly different meanings. In the case of hilarious and hysterical, they both mean funny, but hysterical tends to be more funny than something that is hilarious. So even though they may convey a slightly different meaning, they are still synonymous. On the other side of the coin, we have antonyms. So what are those? Well, antonyms are words or phrases that have opposite meanings. Antonyms cannot be used interchangeably. So if we were to apply the same strategy that we did with synonyms, antonyms aren't going to show us that the words are similar. They're going to show us that they mean the exact opposite thing. Let's look at this first example. Giraffes are very tall due to the length of their necks. Now let's consider short. Giraffes are very short due to the length of their necks. What happens when we interchange tall and short? It changes the overall meaning of the sentence. As a matter of fact, if we use short to describe the giraffe, we're making the statement untrue. Not only that, it doesn't make sense. Can we really say that giraffes are very short due to the length of their necks? No, that sentence makes no sense at all. In the second example, Sarah noticed a strange bite on her dog's leg. Now let's swap out strange for normal. Sarah noticed a normal bite on her dog's leg. In this case, both sentences can be true. But when we interchange strange and normal, it completely changes the meaning of what we want to convey in the sentence. Antonyms typically come in three types. Let's take a look at each. First are complementary antonyms. In this case, these have no middle ground. If you think of the statement that things are black or white, there's no gray area. It essentially means the same thing with a complementary antonym. It's one or the other. There's nothing in between. Some good examples would be boy, girl, on, off, day, night, dead, alive, and then finally, pass, fail. With complementary antonyms, it can either be one or the other. There is no in between. Next are relational antonyms, and these, in this case, both must exist for them to be antonyms. To help us understand that, let's look at a couple of examples. Above, below. You cannot have an above without a below, or vice versa. Both must be in place for them to be antonyms. Husband, wife. If there is no husband, then there's no wife. If there's no wife, there's no husband. So those cannot be antonyms unless both exist. Let's take a look at one more. Give, receive. We have one person giving, but in order for somebody to give something, there has to be someone present to receive it. In order for someone to receive something, there has to be someone present to give it. Without both of these existing at the same time in the same place, they cannot be antonyms. Finally, the third type of antonyms are known as graded. In this case, we are dealing with levels of comparison. So what that means is if we're describing something as being hard or easy, we could be thinking of it in terms of a scale, with hard being right here, easy being here. Now, depending on who you ask, if we want to compare what everybody thought about, say, a homework assignment, I could say, I thought it was rather easy. And then Johnny could come along and say, no, it wasn't that easy, but it's somewhere in between. It wasn't too hard, but it wasn't too easy either. And then Michael may come along and say, no, it was really hard. So again, easy and hard are antonyms, but we are making a comparison based on a degree of perception. Another good example would be fast and slow. Making a comparison of speed, one person may say that 80 miles per hour is pretty fast, and somebody else could say, no, 80 miles per hour is not fast enough. Even though there's a different perception on speed in this case, fast and slow are still antonyms. One strategy to create an antonym is by simply taking the word and adding a prefix. For example, when we have the word agree, if we add the prefix dis, we have now created an antonym. The opposite of agree is disagree. Decent. What would the opposite of decent be? In this case, we would add the prefix in. Indecent is its opposite. Behave. Well, if I add miss in front of it, misbehave is the opposite of behave. Able. If I add un to the beginning of it, the opposite of able is unable. And then finally, since. Well, I can add non in front of it, and that gives me its opposite, nonsense. Before we work through some examples to apply and practice what we have learned on iExcel, let's take a moment to discuss a tool that you can use to help you identify and understand synonyms and antonyms. Now, you're most likely not going to be carrying a physical copy of a thesaurus around with you. It's not really going to be efficient for you to do that. The great thing is, since you most likely do carry some kind of mobile device, you actually have access to a thesaurus at your fingertips. You can go on whatever search engine that you use or whatever web browser that you have on your phone and go to dictionary.com or just thesaurus.com. You can also download the dictionary app on your phone, and the great thing about that app is it automatically gives you access to a thesaurus. And finally, you can consult with Siri or even Google and just ask them to give you a synonym for a particular word right on your mobile device.